Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, here doing a Japanese double bill review. Short video, not going to spend too long on both these kind of movies, but I wanted to discuss them and talk about these films and kind of get my thoughts and opinions out there, down to its kind of significance with the brand new 80th film release editions are coming out very, very soon, guys. These are getting brand new limited edition kind of sets. I'm talking about Tokyo Decadence and the Evil Dead Trap. There is Evil Dead Trap 2, which is also coming out. Both those two films are out in February. Tokyo Decadence is coming out, or already out in the UK as of the moment. And these, again, first time release in the UK, uncut, on a Blu-ray kind of format, which is quite exciting for people that want to explore more Japanese kind of movies or films that they've always heard about but never got access to. And these are proper nice editions from 80th film editions. And I was very curious, but I want to check them out beforehand just to kind of see if these are ones that I want to kind of purchase or kind of pick up on the official release. So I want to talk about both these films, and I think it'd be good to do a small double bill review for you guys to get my thoughts and opinions out there and to kind of give you guys an expectation to what these films are and what you might be in for, essentially. So let's start with Tokyo Decadence. Tokyo Decadence, released in 1992 from a director which I'm not really familiar with. He's only done a handful of movies according to his IMDb listing. This is a part of the kind of that new wave during that time of very specific kind of pink movies. If you don't know what a pink movie is, it essentially is a softcore porn but has a bit of a thriller or kind of a message or social aspect to it. Essentially, these are very specific films that are tailored for a very specific audience, but usually have something extra on top of it. Essentially, it's essentially what a category 3 film is. You got the exploitation nature in terms of nudity or kind of the sexuality kind of thing, and then you've got all the violence and the gore and all the kind of cool factors kind of thing to it. So take it what these movies as you will, in the sense whether you're a fan of these ones or not. There can be some quite good ones in that genre, and a lot of the big Japanese directors have all been associated with pink films at some point down the line. There's a lot of movies out there that are essentially not particularly very good, or just kind of just cheap and kind of just flimsy or kind of out there, but there is some good ones or stylistic ones that take advantage of that kind of idea and do something with it, and this is one of them for sure. However, not one that I would revisit or one that I would highly recommend necessarily. Tokyo Decadence essentially is a kind of exploring this kind of world of S&M plan of play. Essentially, you've got our main character, which is very shy, very reserved, someone who was in a relationship, and there's a bit of a commentary in the film and theme of the film about drugs, about loneliness, about acceptance, about pushing yourself to limits and doing things that you wouldn't necessarily do out of your comfort zone, just to kind of exist, essentially, and it's not exactly like an Oscar-winning performance. It's not something that's going to change your life, but it's just an examination or kind of a journey or explorative nature of this character's kind of day-by-day life. We've seen these types of movies before. Comes to mind example is Secret Diaries of a Call Girl with Billie Piper. There's a UK series that came a long time ago, and there's many other movies or TV shows that have explored this type of thing as well. And this is heavily on the S&M side of the play, and it has a lot of extended sequences about different kind of clients and different people that she comes across with, and some of it's quite interesting, some of it's kind of takes your breath away. They kind of did some of this stuff, or they went there, and I think for me, like, the first hour of this film kind of represents ultimately what the film's trying to say and what it's trying to do. It kind of achieves everything that it's trying to say ultimately by the first hour, in terms of the compare and contrast with this main character and what she does and trying to search for happiness. This idea where she's going to this random person on the street and kind of basically trying to find love and happiness, and if you have these certain items you will do that, and while at the same time kind of meeting the needs of these kind of clients he comes across with, and all of them very strange, very kind of depending on your viewpoint, quite disturbing in places, or some of it kind of like, yeah, okay, I can, yeah, that's a thing kind of thing, Whether you enjoy that kind of titillating version of this film, and the themes that do play out, and whether you like the drama side of it, is entirely up to you. It's a very subjective kind of film. I think it's very light on story, it's very light on character, it's more focused on that, but it's stylistic, it's well presented, well filmed, and it's well put together, essentially. And you kind of get the point of the film very quickly within that first hour, but you still got another hour to get through, and it's kind of like, okay, why am I sticking around? There's nothing else here to explore. And being the fact, especially when they do the first kind of major scene with her being in the apartment complex, the scene on the poster, that's the kind of summary of the best kind of tale of what she's doing essentially within her day-to-day life, essentially, and her job essentially going forward. So all the other stuff come after it is just more for like kind of shock factor, or kind of just weird factor, or whatever you want to say. And by the end, it's kind of like, okay, that's it. There's nothing else further to explore. And, take it for what you will. This could be a masterpiece for some people. This could be a very trashy, very forgotten film. For me, I'm somewhere in the middle. I think it's just an okay film. Something noteworthy as well, there actually is 2 sequels to the film, basically sequel by name only, essentially. The second film is the director of Door 1 and 2, which has a third window release recently, which might be quite more interesting. I've heard very good things about that. And the third one I don't think it's available in any kind of format that I'm aware of, but there is 2 of additional entries, which maybe the 88 Films might get around to doing at some point. But the first one is the more kind of mainstream, kind of well-known, kind of more established kind of pink movie compared to the other 2. So yeah, what are your thoughts and opinions on Tokyo Decadence? What are your thoughts and opinions on the kind of the genre itself, on Japanese kind of pink movies? Please comment down below. So let's talk about next, The Evil Dead Trap. The Evil Dead Trap was released in 1998 from a director that's very much known for doing pink movies and a lot of kind of horror and kind of thriller kind of based kind of content. I haven't seen any of his other films, but he has done a noteworthy. He has done Evil Dead Trap 3, which is a sequel title only kind of thing. I think it's a completely separate film, nothing to do with the other 2 movies, just kind of like an anthology entry. That's kind of ties it all together. So this is a kind of a big film for Japanese kind of horror, and during that kind of time frame, this was kind of a booming kind of rise of kind of horror movies that were coming out, and a bit of a cult movie, I would say. Ultimately, something that's kind of been passed around from people to people, word of mouth, have kind of made this film bigger than it probably already is. But definitely something that I was pleasantly surprised with, but also at the same time, definitely just a one-off viewing. Ultimately, the film Evil Dead Trap, again exploiting that name as mentioned from like the Holy Virgin vs. the Evil Dead, exploiting that name. I'm not really sure why it's called The Evil Dead. It's just, again, just buzzwords, putting words together. Hey, look, Evil Dead's recognizable, it's known. It sticks in your mind, it kind of gets you out there, and you're thinking, oh, Evil Dead, associate that with this. So you kind of associate to different kind of projects, essentially. The film itself is actually surprisingly quite well handled and actually pretty goddamn good. It's just a couple of things that really can't let the film down ultimately, which I'll get into in a minute. But the concept and the idea for it, straight off the bat, is actually pretty gold and actually pretty clever. And I've seen this kind of thing before within other movies, but during that kind of time and the way it's presented, the way it's kind of shown, is very effective, and it's very creepy, and it kind of sucks you into this kind of atmosphere. This is an hour and 40-minute film, and the first 40 minutes really kind of speed things up quite quickly, surprisingly, and also is kind of the problem towards the kind of last hour, but again, I'll get into that. The storyline for Evil Dead Trap is essentially this kind of news reporter. There's someone who does shocking kind of video kind of footage. She's someone who is very exploitive, someone who's using kind of very kind of raw material, like, essentially like, late night kind of, YouTube, essentially. She's someone who is getting videotapes, is a journalist, someone who is going out to locations and trying to find the most shocking kind of material out there, something that is kind of squeamish and kind of, edgy, something that's a bit kind of, get your kind of attention for the ratings for her kind of show. And she has a team of people, and she gets sent this tape, basically, which is someone being viciously kind of murdered, essentially, and she's not sure about it. She does mention in the film, which I'm glad she did, going to the authorities. The producer thinks it's a fake, but said, hey, gives her permission, gives her kind of, time to go to location and to prove that if it is real or not, essentially. And she does. She takes a whole team to this kind of abandoned location without any kind of, security or any kind of, kind of backup, essentially. This kind of facility that's basically been closed down, almost like a factory, essentially. It's kind of our main factory unit. So a couple of sub-houses and locations all fenced off. And they just open the door and they walk themselves in and they kind of explore this kind of very desolated, kind of very decrepit kind of location, which is a fantastic setting for a horror film, and they walk straight into it. And atmosphere-wise, really spot on in terms of location. Again, fucking awesome. Music is very kind of effective, very kind of Dario Argento kind of thing, which is the good aspects of those kind of movies, which I do appreciate. Cinematography is really interesting, how he uses music, lighting, camera work to really kind of get the best out of these scenes, and the shadow work is brilliant as well. The violence is pretty spot on. It has some pretty nasty, gnarly deaths, which is great for this type of film. Almost kind of like a kind of Wolf Creek meets kind of Jigsaw in the sense, why does he take that character? He basically sets up traps in this fucking, factory location. There's some pretty nasty, gnarly deaths in the film, which is great. It also does have some more of the more typical Japanese kind of, kind of exploitative nature, with the kind of some rape sequences and some kind of exploitative kind of nudity, which is just kind of in there for the sake of being in there to kind of boost up that rating and kind of get the audience kind of attention. However, it's very few and far between. It happens during the kind of first 40 minutes. It doesn't really take effect for the last hour, which is perfectly fine. The first 40 minutes is surprisingly quite effective. It actually kind of surprisingly kills off a lot of characters. It actually has a lot of interesting kind of scenarios that do play out. However, one of the things I would say about that first 40 minutes is that characters are fucking dumb. Characters do things or kind of just run into situations, which not really thinking about it. I know social situations, I know, each character is quite different, but I think some of the character decision making is quite dumb. And if you didn't do that one thing, you wouldn't have died, essentially. But, it is what it is. It's a horror film from the 80s. Characters got to do certain things to kind of get to a certain point. But it's surprisingly quite well effective. And it's all down to this one person, this kind of mask. He's got a very nasty knife, very Wolf Creek kind of esque. And he's got prisoners. He's got people that he's kind of tortured beforehand. He's killed a lot of people. There's a lot of bodies everywhere. And he's picking them off one by one, essentially, in very creative, very nasty means. And you've got this main kind of journalist, this main reporter, which is our main character, which is essentially kind of figuring out, why she was sent there, why was this tape addressed to her, why is this infatuation with her, essentially. And there's a few other characters she comes across with in the place, and that's where the last hour of the film essentially is. Surprisingly, they've done a lot within the first 40 minutes. The concept is the first 40 minutes, and then the last hour is essentially this character, one, trying to escape, but also trying to, have some bit of agency and trying to think, I want to crack this. I want to, I don't want to just run away and be a victim. I want to take down the bad guy, essentially. It's a little bit naive. Again, some character motivation stuff I don't quite agree upon, but I get it. But that's a bit of an issue with the film. I'd say some of the kind of the motivation, some of the agency, some of these characters is very kind of questionable. I'm not quite sure if it works for the main character, at least anyway. She's fascinated. She's curious about what's happening, and she has an opportunity to escape, but she chooses not to. She just go back instead, which is dumb. But whatever, you wouldn't get your third act of your film. And then I won't say too much if you don't know where this film goes ultimately. It gets a bit bonkers, to say the least. It definitely kind of has a few scenes and a few ideas in terms of the kind of concept that I really wasn't expecting to see, for sure. It definitely kind of goes there. It goes very 80s, let's just say that for sure. One of the things that is a little bit annoying towards the kind of the third act of the film is the kind of the false endings. It has multiple false endings where they think the film's going to end, but it chooses not to. It actually just keeps on going. It has, it keeps on going. I think this is about 4 times, where you think the film is finished, but it keeps on going, keeps on introducing new things. I think anyone that picks this film up, I definitely will have a good time for sure. Definitely with a bunch of friends, something quite different. And it kind of, even though it doesn't live up to the kind of the title Evil Dead, I think it could have used a better title ultimately. It's surprisingly well handled, and it does have a lot of the key points that I do like to see within a horror film, and does succeed very well on it. Definitely a lot more so than I would say for like Holy Virgin and the kind of the Evil Dead, which is something that didn't work at all. This one commits to its horror, commits to its kind of very 80s kind of ideas, which I'll leave to the film ultimately. So it's definitely worth checking out. but it is something to revisit, something to re-explore. I'm not too sure. I'll be checking out Evil Dead Trap 2 very soon as well. So what are your thoughts and opinions on both these films, guys? Please comment down below. What are your thoughts and opinions on Tokyo Decadence? What are your thoughts and opinions on the Evil Dead Trap? Have you seen part 2 of that, or any of the sequels to these films? I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions. Please comment down below. So in time, guys, I'm for reviews. Signing out.